This is also going to be a YouTube video, so what's up YouTube? Say hi to YouTube chat. We're doing a Boardbreakers / going second card tier list because it was very commonly requested under my hand trap video, which if you haven't seen it yet, my most recent video was a hand trap guide for the upcoming Power of the Elements format, and I was asked a lot to also do the same thing for board breaker cards in general, because in that video I said that it is technically possible to beat decks like Sprite with only going second cards. You don't necessarily have to use hand traps in that type of matchup, because the deck doesn't actually like lock you out of the game with something like Artifact Scythe, which that card might still be in the format in the form of like Adventure Synchro Scythe lock decks, you know, we don't know. But just in the case that it's just Sprite or tier elements, you can definitely think about playing some board breakers, right? We made a list with like chat of like, I don't know, 20 board breaker cards, some better than others. That's the point of such ranking, and we're going to talk about which of these are going to be useful in the upcoming format. There's a couple ones that are relatively obviously strong. I think one that's been the most hyped, pretty much, that I've seen the most of is definitely Dark Ruler No More. Dark Ruler No More is a card that sees a lot of main deck play, in at least what I see in early testing for the Power of the Elements format. The reason being is it alone answers the Sprite board, it answers Winda. When you go second, drawing Dark Ruler No More is more reliable than one hand trap, especially in the Sprite matchup, because the Sprite matchup doesn't have many ways to play around it. They can search a quick play that is a little bit of an interruption, but for the most part their board loses to Dark Ruler No More. It's a very simple solution. You don't have to worry about, you know, how do I hand trap them correctly? Is my Ghost Ogre gonna resolve, or are they gonna be able to play around it? Do they have this or that extender? No, for the most part, if you have Dark Ruler No More, that's gonna be fine. But it's worth noting that, of course, the card is gonna suck when you go first, right? When you make a board and your opponent starts breaking it and you have a spell card in your hand that you can't use to defend yourself as opposed to a hand trap. There's pros and cons, but if you go second, this card is definitely better than most hand traps in most matchups, and that's why some people prefer even main decking that card. Next up, we got two cards in Sphere Mode and Lava Golem. I'm gonna put them in the experimental category. They don't really depend on the meta, because of course, tributing 2 or 3 monsters is going to be good, but the issue with these is they require you to not be reliant on your normal summon, which for the majority of decks they're not going to be an option anyways, right? Which is the exact same as it is right now. Like, of course these cards help breaking an adventure board, but not any deck can support playing these cards, but they are definitely something to be experimented with. Raigeki, I personally think, same as Dark Hole, and for that matter also Slumber, I am personally going to throw them in the bad category, simply because Splight is just not weak to this card. It is not weak to getting their cards destroyed by a spell card, because it does have Toad Negate, it does have an IP that they can chain to make like an Avramax that can't be destroyed by card effects or something. Like, I would throw them in the side deck or experimental category if we expect that Sword Soul to be very popular. But in the case of Sprite, I don't see these being very good. I expect most tier element decks to run some sort of Shadow Splash to get to Winda, and these cards won't help you with that. Lightning Storm I don't think is good enough to main deck, similar to Dark Ruler, simply because this card will get negated by most meta decks and it will not be able to destroy a Winda or something. I think this is going to be exclusively a side deck card to actually hit Backrow decks and some combo decks, but for the main deck I don't think it's impactful enough. Like, you're going to hate it when you go first, and going second it's not even going to be that great. Like, if a Splight player full combos, a Lightning Storm is not going to win you the game. Evenly matched, kind of the same boat. Both of these cards are solid against Backrow decks, but against the top meta decks, like, unfortunately Splight just puts up too many negations for this card to be good. Ultimate Slay, new card from Power of the Elements, which if you don't know this card yet, I mean, everyone should be familiar with it at this point. It's been hyped up to great amounts. It's a secret rare and Starlight rare in the upcoming set. It is a normal spell card that is not once per turn, that states you send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard to return a monster to the deck that your opponent controls that is the same card type, like Fusion, XYZ, Link, Synchro. This card is very good. I'm having a hard time assigning it the main deck category, but I am gonna put it here because with the same argument that you can make that Dark Ruler is main deckable, I think this card is also main deckable. The only reason why I'm putting this a little lower than Dark Ruler is the fact that you need to make some room in your extra deck to use this card, right? You cannot just play this card and expect it to perform well, of course. You need to run specific targets in your extra deck to facilitate this card, right? You need fusion targets, which we have Elder Entity Entus. You need potentially the new TCG World Premiere card, the Garura, right? If you want to send a Link monster, the best target that people have been running is the Evil Twin Trouble Sunny, which requires you to run the other Evil Twin main deck monster as a brick. So you have to make some concessions in deck building if you want to fit this card in. But if you can do that, if your deck can make the room in the extra deck for like 2 to 3 cards, you could definitely make the argument that main decking this card is maybe even better than Dark Ruler, because it does always answer like 2 cards really efficiently. But the cool thing about this card is that it actually removes the card off the field, right? Let's say I use this on the Splight Elf with the Trouble Sunny, shuffle it back into the deck, and then I use the Trouble Sunny Grave effect to get rid of the Toad. I've actually gotten rid of the cards, as opposed to if I Dark Ruler, the cards are still there, and then if I get stopped by my opponent's hand traps, right, and I can't clear the board, I still lose the game. Ultimate Slay does not have that problem. It clears the board, and then if you get stopped, you might end up in a grind game situation that is still winnable for you, right? Next up, we got the forbidden cards, Droplet and Chalice. Droplet is absolutely main deckable, even though, I'm gonna say it right now, the top decks don't really like this card. The card is good against Splight. The problem is you have to send 3 or 4 cards. Like, you have to negate Toad, Elf, Splight Red. Probably you have to send 3 cards. And the top decks don't really have great cards that they can send. If we're talking specifically in Splight, I think this card is not even good. Like, I think you don't want this card in Splight because they don't have graveyard effects they can benefit off. So Droplet is not looking too crazy. One that I think is very, very strong is Triple Tactics Talents. Triple Tactics Talents is very nice against Splight. It's not going to be enough alone, but it's a very cool card to just have next to other non-engine cards or just a bunch of engine. The main reason why I like this card a lot is it also is very nice when you go first, right? This is kind of the issue that Dark Ruler and Ultimate Slay have. When you go first and you get hand trapped, you can make use of the card. You can either draw 2 or you can look at your opponent's hand, rip a card. You're definitely going to see some amount of play. Not everyone is going to prefer it over hand traps, but it's definitely main deckable. If you have like only 2 lines of play and they have 2 Toad negates, you use 1 line of play and then you force the second Toad negate with the Triple Tactics, which can be usable, right? Chalice I think is not very good, but you can, I mean, it's not bad either, so I'm gonna put it in experimental, but it's not great. You'd always rather play Imperm. This guy I'm putting at the top of experimental, which is also a new card from Power of the Elements. The reason why I'm not throwing it in bad is because I simply don't think it's a bad card. Well, first of all, the effect of the card is it's a 1500 level 1 monster that states you can summon it by tributing all of your opponent's monsters on the field that have used their effect this turn already. The way it works is it doesn't actually counter any negates, right? Anything that has not been used yet, like a Barone that hasn't negated yet, you cannot tribute. The reason why I think this card is still experimental is that there might be some decks out there that make boards that are really weak to it. Let them use their Baron negate, then you tribute the Baron. This thing has 3000 attack after because it gains 1500 for everything it tributes. It's 3000, you tribute the Baron, you attack over something else, and then in the end phase, which is another part of its effect, in the end phase you can special summon one of your opponent's cards from the graveyard. So you can take their Barone, and it's kind of cute. Mind Control and Change of Heart I'm going to throw in the side deck category. Both of these are reasonable in the Splight mirror and maybe in some other mirror matches as well. I don't think they're the best option, but I wouldn't be completely shocked to see someone do well because they decided to side these for the mirror match. Super Poly goes right here. Simply going off the fact that they released Garura, Super Poly becomes main deckable. As long as we have Garura, Super Poly will probably be a main deck card for the rest of its lifespan. It's finally over the edge now where the card is so generically good that you can probably use it against every single deck to an extent. The only requirement for this card is you need to have the extra deck space to run 1, 2, 3 different targets. It's a quick play spell card, so you can use it both when you go first and going second. Like going first, you set it, you can take away 2 monsters when they're trying to play. Garura, when it's sent to the graveyard, draws you another card. It's just a nutty card that definitely is going to see play, and decks are gonna have to adjust the way they make their board because of this card alone. Splight players have to think about, am I even gonna use my Toad effect in the standby phase to summon Dupe Frog? Am I even gonna leave Splight Elf and Splight Red on the board because they are both fire and thunder? Or is it maybe even worth to play around Super Poly by making something with these? Like, it's ridiculous. Kaiju Kaiju, I'm gonna throw in bad. I think the time that Kaijus are good is just not now. There's no decks that focus on just one tower-like monster. Like, the only card I can think of that a Kaiju would be really neat against is Winda, but there's better solutions if you're just worried about Winda. Like, it's okay against Adventure, right? If you're worried about getting Scythe locked, you can tribute the Halka Fibrax so they can't tag out. It's okay. It can't be negated by Barone. Fair enough, but I'm not a huge fan of it still. I just think the options that we have over here are just more powerful. There's just better options, which makes this just bad in comparison. Alpha, the Master of Beasts. This, to me, actually is the most interesting card on the list, and I'm gonna throw it at the very top of Experimental because I've been suggested this card a lot. And I'm really curious to see, like, it's got some neat applications. I think the cards it competes with are very, very strong up here. These spell cards right here, my god, is it hard to be better than these at going second. But OCG plays it a lot. It's a good point. It's kind of a good card, and I'm definitely not putting it in the bad category. I'm putting it in experimental. It's just I have to experiment with it myself to say if it feels better than these cards up here. It definitely feels good. I can say that. It feels solid. But it remains to be seen if it actually feels better than these guys up here. Because that's what it has to be doing, right? It has to be doing something better than these. Otherwise, it's not going to be amazing. Mystic Mine, everyone's favorite card right at the end of the tier list. I think I have good news for you. I think this card is gonna not make its way into many main decks. Simply because the standard turn 1 Splight combo searches Splight Smashers, which is a quick play removal spell. You are very incentivized to search that card in your combo because it makes your deck better against cards like Dark Ruler. So a lot of people are gonna do it. Everyone is gonna play it, which makes the main deck Mystic Mine a lot less powerful. It might be good in some other matchups, which is why I think it's definitely still probably at the top of the side deck cards, but then after siding, people can come prepared with like spell and trap removal against certain decks. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of main deck Mystic Mine. I don't think it's gonna be as big of an issue, especially if you play Sprite. You can be prepared for it. Last but not least, we got Pankertops. Pankertops is a card that has been pretty bad this format, I feel like. Even if it's just a one-off, I think Pankertops is gonna return to some side decks because it is very good against Sprite. It is worth noting that in the case of Pankertops, it benefits a lot from the Super Poly dynamic. The reason why Pankertops is good against Sprite is because he's just 2600, so he can attack over some of their negates, right? Which Splight could prevent that to an extent by using Dupe Frog. It was not a staple in Sprite, but in the OCG, but like you can definitely do that. You can make Toad and then summon a Dupe Frog from your deck, which they have to attack the Dupe Frog then. If Super Poly becomes very popular, and people have to respect it and not summon the Dupe Frog off of Toad, Pankertops gets a lot better because you can simply attack over the Totally Awesome, and then you can tribute Pankertops to destroy the Splight Elf, which Splight Elf cannot reborn in the battle phase, right? And so you get rid of both Toad negates with one card if they don't have Dupe Frog, which is very neat. Also, it's worth noting that in case you're facing any floodgates, it still solves these issues, right? Like it solves skill drain, it solves anti-spell, it solves whatever. I think we're gonna see a decent amount of Pankertops being played. And that's it. That's all the 20 board breakers that I wanted to talk about. If I forgot any that you think are viable in the upcoming format, definitely feel free to comment it down below. Give me feedback on how you liked this list. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it helps you build your decks for the upcoming format. If you did, you know, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Other than that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day and peace out.